Welcome to Canada Conversations, part of Delaware Debates 2014, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. This Canada Conversation, taped here on the campus of Delaware State University, focuses on the race for U.S. Senate. We are joined by the incumbent Democratic Senator Chris Coons. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, we start with the most basic of questions. Why are you running for another term as U.S. Senator?
Well, Tom, I'm running for my first full 6-year term in the Senate because there's work undone and because I have enjoyed the 4 years that I've had to work hard for Delawareans every day. The best part of the job of being senator is the work I get to do here in Delaware, connecting with people, hearing their concerns, and then working with them to deal with issues that come up with the Social Security Administration, with Medicare, with Medicaid, with the Veterans Administration, or to help work together with state and local governments to support the private sector in growing the jobs that we need here in Delaware. I've worked hard in my first 4 years to be bipartisan, something that I think Delawareans want. In fact, I was recently ranked the third most bipartisan senator by the number of bills introduced with members of the opposite party. And there's issues that I've worked on, whether it's supporting the manufacturing sector, helping make college more affordable, growing our exports overseas, advocating for our poultry industry, or others, where I've got a bill introduced, I've got a strong Republican co-sponsor, we've gotten through a committee hearing, but it hasn't been enacted yet. There's more work to be done, and I'd be grateful for the opportunity to keep working on Delaware's behalf.
Tell us a little bit about, or at least tell the voters a little bit about your background and qualifications, maybe something that they don't already know about Chris Coons.
Well, I'm not sure that folks would know that I spent 8 years working in the manufacturing sector, that I worked for a manufacturing company that was started in Newark, Delaware, and is now a global company. That's what I did after finishing law school and a clerkship and working in the nonprofit field and before going into county government. I spent 10 years in Newcastle County government, 4 as county council president and 6 as the county executive. And the good thing about being county executive, although it was hard, was that I had to balance budgets, I had to deliver real results, and it wasn't a very partisan job. I mean, there really isn't a Republican or a Democratic way to fix the sewer system or to reduce the response time for paramedics or build a new library. So it gave me some real hands-on experience in how government should work, and in the Delaware way of finding a path forward that's less partisan, less about the fighting, and more about the doing. So those are 2 areas of background that I bring to the table every day. Last thing I suspect folks don't know is that I have a degree in chemistry and a master's in ethics from Divinity School. So I try to apply to my work in the Senate the technical strength and skills I got from the chemistry degree, as well as the faith foundation that I got from my work in Divinity School.
Let's talk a little bit about some issues. Unemployment rate in Delaware has been hovering just above 6% for some time now. If reelected, how do you work on bringing that down?
Well, first, I would work more closely with the state government and with businesses here in Delaware. I've just finished visiting 13 different small manufacturers across Sussex County. I'm convinced that manufacturing can grow in Delaware. In Kent, in Sussex, in Newcastle counties, in all 3, we've got small and medium employers that are looking for skilled workers, where they have jobs that are vacant right now. I've co-chaired with the other 2 members of the congressional delegation 18 job fairs so far. And while I wish we weren't in a place where we needed to do this, I think this is an inventive way for our congressional delegation to bring together in one time at one place employers who are ready and willing to hire, as well as job skills training and access to higher education institutions like Delaware State University for those who are looking for work. Over the last 4 years, the number of employers with real jobs for which they're hiring at these job fairs has gone up, and the number of folks desperately seeking good jobs has gone down. So I do think the trends are going in the right direction. But I would continue to work with employers large and small across the state, try and reduce regulatory burdens on those private sector companies that are trying to grow, and try and make sure we invested more in making higher education affordable, infrastructure more modern and robust, and opening export markets for Delaware companies.
Budget and national debt have been an issue that you've had to deal with a lot in your first 4 years in office. How do you address that going forward, that continuing issue?
We have cut the federal deficit in half over the last 4 years. And I do think going forward we face a significant challenge. We have a record national debt, and as a member of the Budget Committee, we're going to have tough votes ahead. I am someone who is willing to make responsible reductions in federal spending. But I also think we need to continue to invest in things that will make our country more competitive and will help provide higher quality jobs for our communities and for our kids going forward. So I will prioritize investing in education, in infrastructure, in research, in things that can actually strengthen our country, while also being willing to vote for real and sustained cuts in federal spending over the long term.
You mentioned that willingness to work with the other side. The partisan divide in Congress continues to be a major issue. What other things can you do to bridge that gap?
Well, I've invested a great deal of time in building personal friendships with Republicans, whether it's my co-chair of the Chicken Caucus, Johnny Isaacson of Georgia, who served with me on the African Affairs Subcommittee, or it's Roy Blunt, a Republican of Missouri, who's the co-chair of the Law Enforcement Caucus with me. We've worked hard on issues that matter to us and that matter to our home communities, whether it's exporting poultry to the growing markets of the developing world, or it's providing bulletproof vests to law enforcement officers who need and deserve them in state and local law enforcement. I find that the best way to be bipartisan is to listen to my colleagues who are Republican, who come for good reasons from their states and who have positive ideas. I have ended up finding a dozen great folks who I can work with. Just one example, the Victims of Child Abuse Act, which was initially championed by former Senator, now Vice President Joe Biden, had been unauthorized for years and was defunded just 2 years ago. There are child advocacy centers in all 3 counties in Delaware. And although none of us likes to talk about child abuse, these centers are remarkably effective ways to help families heal and to bring those who commit these horrible crimes to justice in a positive way. I was able to work with Senator Blunt of Missouri, Republican Senator Sessions of Alabama, and Democratic Senator Hirono of Hawaii to get that law reauthorized and to ensure that its funding continues. In fact, the reauthorization bill passed the Senate, passed the House, and was just signed into law in August by President Obama. It is possible to get good things done in the current Congress. You just have to keep at it and be willing to compromise.
Where one area that's been difficult to get things done is immigration. What can Congress do about the growing immigration crisis? Obviously, it's been exacerbated a little bit by the recent influx of unaccompanied children fleeing violence in Central America. How do we move forward on immigration?
Well, last year, one of the things I am proudest of that we worked hard together on in the United States Senate was the bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform bill that made it through the Judiciary Committee on which I serve and then made it out of the United States Senate by a strong bipartisan vote. It would invest more in securing our borders. It would invest more in systems that track and monitor those who are here temporarily on visas and make sure that they leave on time. It would invest more in deportation. But it also would have opened up a pathway towards earned citizenship for those who pay a fine, who learn English, who play by the rules, and who pay their taxes. And in the end, it achieved an important series of compromises, strengthening high-skilled immigration, investing more in public education for U.S. nationals, striking the right balance for farm workers and for those who own farms, and securing our border. I thought it was a rough-hewn, tough, hard-fought, but important compromise. And I'm very disappointed that the House of Representatives has so far failed to take it up or to even seriously debate or consider it. It's my hope that in the next Congress, a comparable, balanced package of tough decisions, but that will make progress on immigration, will see action in the House and the Senate.
I want to delve into foreign policy. In recent months, we've seen fighting in Israel and Gaza, Syria, Iraq, Ukraine. Realizing that all these conflicts have their own very unique issues involved with them, do you see a general rule of thumb or criteria for U.S. involvement or intervention in these type of conflicts?
First, I think it's important for our allies to know where we stand, and our opponents and enemies, those who would attack us or harm us, or our allies, to know where we stand as well. I am a strong supporter of Israel and of its right to self-defense. The recent conflict in Gaza was a conflict not with the Palestinian people, but with Hamas, a terrorist group, a group that has used its own civilians and its own members as human shields and has rained thousands of rockets down on innocent civilians across Israel. A very tough conflict to watch, but a conflict where I do think we need to make it clear to our ally Israel that we will stand with them. Second, I think it's important that we act in a multilateral way where possible. So in Syria and in Iraq, the United States is strongest when we act from a platform of principle, but where we also work with the support of our European allies who share a lot of our values and our views and concerns. Last, we need to make it clear that we're not going to tolerate vicious attacks on American citizens. There was a recent horrific beheading of an American journalist. There was a recent attempt by ISIS to wipe out an entire minority, the Yazidis in Iraq. When genocide is threatened, or when innocent American civilians, and in particular journalists, are killed, I think it's important for us to stand on principle and to mobilize the world community to marginalize and to ultimately eliminate folks who are terrorists and jihadists and who threaten our allies in the region, America's security, and the security of our allies.
I want to finish up on education. Common Core standards getting a lot of attention, slowly being implemented here in Delaware. Where do you stand on Common Core and education reform?
In general, I support education reform. We live in a very competitive global environment. The United States needs to continue to step up its game in terms of the skills that young people are learning in high school and with which they're leaving high school. As I have visited manufacturers and other employers ready and willing to hire up and down this state, they all say they need young people coming out of high school to have more relevant, more current, and stronger skills. We also need to include parents in how their children are being educated. And I think one of the weaknesses of some recent education reforms is they haven't fully engaged parents as much as they could. Families are busy. More and more families are either single parent families or juggling 2 full-time jobs. And so there are some ways that we can do a stronger job of engaging parents. Last, we need to respect teachers as the professionals they are. And whether it's teachers or paraprofessionals, the folks who are charged with educating our kids need the support, the time, and the resources to be able to deliver on that important mission. So while in general I think having a Common Core is good because it sets a standard, and having standardized testing is good, we need to not remove the human element in teaching. Teachers, when all they're doing is teaching to a test, stop being teachers and start being those who just recite rote memorization. What makes American education unique is that historically teachers have been free to take whatever approaches they will to convey learning and to convey knowledge. What's different between the United States and many of the education systems of Europe and Asia is there's not one mandatory national approach to teaching, and there are different approaches that work for different communities and different kids. We need to strike a healthy balance between those two, respecting the need to steadily improve the content of what kids are learning, but allow teachers the freedom that professionals deserve to teach in ways to respect their individual skills.
Senator Chris Coons, incumbent Democrat, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Tom.
You can find all of our candidate conversations online at DelawarePublicMedia.org and DelawareDebates.org. Candidate conversations are taped here at Delaware State University and are a part of Delaware Debates 2014, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. Thanks so much for joining us.